The neighborhood was a carefully curated tapestry of pastels and picket fences, where every lawn seemed to stand at attention, and each shrub was preened to resemble the next. The homes sat snugly in their neat rows like soldiers awaiting inspection, each one a reflection of the homeowner's pride, or, perhaps more accurately, their fear of the homeowners association's wrath. My house was no exception. It was a quaint, two-story affair with a porch swing that creaked in the wind and a small garden teeming with marigolds and daisies. At its center hung my beloved wind chime, a gift from my late grandmother. It danced in the breeze with a soft, tinkling sound that to me was the melody of memories. But to Karen, our esteemed HOA president, it was an affront, a cacophony that disrupted the regimented silence she so fiercely guarded. She was a force of nature herself, a tempest in a pantsuit, with sharp eyes that missed nothing and a penchant for order that left no room for deviation. Her displeasure was evident in the terse letter I found taped to my door, a perfunctory notice adorned with the HOA's officious letterhead, a $500 fine for a wind chime, citing some obscure violation of noise ordinances. To Karen, it was simply another line in the rulebook to be followed without question. But to me, it was a challenge. I could have removed the chime. I could have paid the fine. But something within me stirred, a quiet rebellion, a resolve to meet her game with one of my own. My resolve was a stone tossed into a pond, its ripples spreading with determination. My response was simple, yet intricate. I spent the next weekend fiddling in my garage, transforming the wind chime into a Morse code maestro. Each note was carefully calibrated, each gust of wind a conductor, directing the chime to play the HOA's rules in Morse code. It was a symphony of irony, a testament to the absurdity of it all. The first day it performed, I watched from my porch as neighbors paused in confusion, their ears catching the rhythm without comprehending its depth. The wind sang its not-so-silent protest, and I felt a satisfaction bloom within me, quiet and serene. Karen was not amused. Her expression, as she passed my house during her morning patrols, was a storm cloud etched with irritation. Yet, she said nothing. Not directly. Her actions spoke louder. A new fine appeared, alongside a fresh edict about unauthorized sound displays. The irony was not lost on me. My wind chime, now a beacon of rebellion, had become a talking point, a silent conversation between me and the rest of the neighborhood. It echoed the unspoken thoughts of those too timid to challenge the dictums enforced upon their lives. This was no longer about a wind chime. It was about boundaries and the invisible lines we draw around our lives. My peaceful response had become a catalyst, and I was curious to see how far the ripples would travel. In the midst of a regimented reality, I had found a quiet power. It wasn't grand or ostentatious, but it was mine. A small note of defiance in a world that demanded harmony above all else. And so, beneath the pastel skies, my wind chime played on. With the wind chime installed and set to tap out the HOA rules in Morse code, my backyard had transformed into a symphony of subdued defiance. The gentle tinkle of metal against metal was a constant reminder of the absurdity lying just beyond the picket fences that separated one neatly manicured lawn from another. Karen, of course, was not one to take quiet rebellion lying down. The neighborhood had been abuzz with the sound of her heels clicking purposefully along the sidewalks, her voice a sharp staccato against the otherwise serene backdrop. She upped her patrols, clipboard in hand, inspecting every inch of the neighborhood with the diligence of a hawk hunting for prey. Each morning, I would find a new citation tucked under my doormat, a veritable bouquet of pastel-colored fines, each more ludicrous than the last. One for the length of my grass, half an inch too long, apparently. Another for the garden gnome that had stood sentinel by my roses for years, suddenly deemed too whimsical for the austere aesthetic that Karen seemed to envision. It was as if she had turned the HOA rulebook into a personal vendetta, itemizing my life one nonsensical infraction at a time. The neighborhood began to take notice. Whispers floated through the cul-de-sac, neighbors exchanging knowing glances and furtive nods as they passed each other at the mailbox. I could sense an undercurrent of unease, a collective holding of breath as everyone waited to see what her next move would be. It amused me, the way Karen seemed to believe she could bend the entire community to her will through sheer force of personality and a well-placed fine. The gossip swirled around like leaves caught in a storm, growing more elaborate with each retelling. In hushed tones, some speculated that she had it out for me because I had once outbid her at the annual charity auction, snagging the coveted weekend getaway she had her eye on. Others whispered about a more personal grudge, a perceived slight at a long-forgotten neighborhood gathering. The truth was, I suspected, far simpler. Karen thrived on control, and my subtle protest was an affront to her carefully constructed order. The sound of the wind chime tapping out its persistent message seemed to unsettle her. I imagined her lying awake at night, the dots and dashes echoing in her mind like the drip, drip, drip of water on stone. It was a war of attrition, and I was content to let time and patience wear down her defenses. Each new citation only added fuel to the fire of my quiet rebellion. I took to documenting them, creating a meticulously organized file of her escalating demands. It was almost comical, watching the pile grow alongside my resolve. For every fine she issued, I found a new creative way to comply, or not, dancing along the edges of her rigid rules with a kind of mischievous grace. The neighborhood watched, of course, the drama unfolding like a slow-motion spectacle. And as the days slipped by, I found a certain peace amidst the chaos. The wind chime continued its steady serenade, a testament to the absurdity of it all. In Morse code, it spoke the truth that lay in plain sight. Sometimes defiance was the only language that could be understood. The morning light seeped through the blinds, casting stripes across the living room floor. It was a day like any other, but it carried with it a hum of anticipation. The wind chime on my porch, now a well-orchestrated symphony of metal and code, began its daily recital. Each gust of wind transformed it into a messenger, tapping out the HOA's tome of rules in the clipped, rhythmic language of Morse. It was no longer just a wind chime. It had become a testament to quiet defiance, a metal tongue wagging in the breeze, echoing what most people wanted to ignore. Every tick, every tinkle, was a reminder of the absurdity that had taken root in our community, a symphony of compliance and rebellion. The neighbors were beginning to notice. At first, it was subtle, a lingering glance, a pause in their routine. My direct neighbors, the Johnsons, were the first to break the silence. Mr. Johnson, who typically spent mornings watering his perfectly manicured lawn, had started to linger by the hedge separating our properties. His face, a canvas of curiosity mixed with disapproval, would twitch with each melodic burst of code. It was a look I had come to appreciate, a small victory in an ongoing war of wills. As the days unfolded, the whispers began. Neighbors who once offered polite nods and distant waves now huddled in clusters, casting sidelong glances at my house. The wind chime became the unwitting conductor of their unease. It was as if the very air carried with it a tale too tantalizing to ignore. I found myself enjoying the spectacle, not out of malice, but out of necessity. It was a needed reminder that conformity, when unchecked, breeds its own brand of madness. The HOA board, predictably, was not amused. Their letters arrived with clockwork precision, each bearing the same stern language. But the fines, those paper threats designed to intimidate, were now met with the clinking of metal, a soundtrack to their futility. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low and cast the neighborhood in a golden hue, a small gathering formed on the sidewalk. The usual suspects. Mrs. Park, with her pinched expression, and Mr. Lowe, whose sour demeanor seemed permanently etched into his features. They stood, arms crossed, a silent tribunal. They did not speak, but the tension hung thick in the air. It was a Mexican standoff of suburban proportions, my wind chime the only thing breaking the silence with its relentless code. I watched them from my porch, the irony not lost on me. Here they were, the self-appointed guardians of order, held captive by a simple chime. Would they confront me, demand silence, or would the absurdity of the situation finally dawn on them? The moment stretched on, a tableau of defiance and judgment. Then, As if on cue, the wind picked up, and the chimes sang out another stanza of the HOA's own dictates. The group dispersed, a ripple of discomfort passing through them, but not before Mr. Lowe paused, his gaze meeting mine. In that shared moment, a flicker of something akin to understanding passed between us. Perhaps he too saw the irony, or maybe he was just tired. Tired of the charade, tired of the rules that had caged us all in a parody of community. As they walked away, I stood and let the wind speak for me, its language both ancient and new. The wind chime continued its song, the neighborhood its audience, and I, its quiet conductor. The battle was far from over, but in that moment, I felt a calm certainty. The rules were just words on paper, but defiance? That was music. The night air was still, almost reverent, as if the whole neighborhood held its breath in anticipation. My wind chime, the infamous instigator of this suburban saga, hung gracefully from the porch, its metallic cylinders gleaming softly under the moonlight. It was a silent sentinel at the gateway to my little rebellion. I stood there, my barefoot toes curled against the cool wood of the porch, and listened. The wind, gentle and knowing, played its part. The chime began to dance, each note deliberate, echoing the relentless sequence I had programmed into its very bones. Short, 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 long, short, long. The Morse code of the HOA rules spilled into the night, a symphony of defiance. Karen had been quiet lately, too quiet. Her reign as the self-proclaimed queen of our cul-de-sac was unraveling, each thread pulled loose by her own missteps. The fines, the petty rules, all instruments of power that she wielded with an iron fist and a velvet glove. But the glove was off now, and the chime was speaking back. Neighbors, once silent spectators caught between amusement and apathy, had started to take notice. The HOA rules, a dry tapestry of restrictions and mandates, were coming alive through the chime's song, each note a reminder of the absurdity that they had endured. I could feel the shift, subtle but tangible, like the first drops of rain before a storm. The power of a community lies not in its rules, but in its people. And slowly, they were remembering this truth. Gatherings on front lawns grew more frequent. Casual conversations sparked with the kindling of shared grievances. Karen's hold was slipping, her authority waning like an autumn sunset. I watched as the chime wove its tale, each note a testament to persistence. The sound seemed to reverberate with a clarity that went beyond the audible, reaching into the hearts of those who listened. It was not just about wind chimes or fines anymore. It was about reclaiming the voice that had been stifled under layers of bureaucracy and control. A light flickered on across the street. Mrs. Klein stepped out onto her porch, her silhouette outlined against the soft glow of her living room. She was a quiet woman, often overlooked, her presence as understated as the whispers of the breeze. But tonight, she lingered, listening, understanding. Others followed. One by one, porch lights dotted the street like fallen stars, each one a silent ally in this gentle rebellion. The community was awakening, and with it, a sense of unity that transcended the trivialities Karen had enforced. I took a breath, the crisp air filling my lungs with the sweet scent of victory. Not the loud, raucous kind, but a quieter, more profound triumph. The sort that settles into your bones and makes you stand a little taller. Karen's voice, usually so strident, had been reduced to a mere echo, a shadow of its former dominance. Her reign had been all about control, but freedom, I realized, was as simple as a wind chime singing its truth into the night. The wind shifted, carrying the chime's notes away into the darkness, a melody of liberation. It was over, not with a bang, but with the gentle, inevitable rustling of change. I let out a slow breath and turned back inside, the warmth of the house wrapping around me like an old friend. The night was young, and for the first time in a long time, it felt full of promise.